Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the Fin Side here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter. Paul is fanatic_pick, as you can see on the screen there. So we are in Senior Bowl week here, and this is where things really start to rev up when it comes to the NFL draft. And it's even more exciting that Brian Flores and the Dolphins are going to be coaching the national roster here. So they're going to get a bird's eye view at a lot of players. And Paul, for me, Senior Bowl week's important, and it's not necessarily the game that's important. The game is kind of the culmination of everything. Yeah, you can see a lot of things in live action, but Senior Bowl week, I mean, I remember just, for example, years ago, Zach Martin was a projected second-round pick, goes there, is one of the best linemen there at Senior Bowl week, and it really gives some teeth to the idea that this guy can play and dominate NFL caliber players. And I think you're going to see a few of these prospects take that same leap here.
Yeah, and it's I really like that Brian Flores is going to have Najee Harris and Devontae Smith there. Even if they're only going to participate in meetings and you name it, it almost feels like a little bit of a cheat code at this point that he's going to get to familiarize himself there. And there's a lot of guys on that roster that I'm really glad to see Flores have there to get a really good long hard look at. I mean, I've been a big Romandre Stevenson fan, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. He's got a real good roster, and Hamilkar Sheds another one that he's got that I don't have on my agenda for today, but I know we're going to be talking about a lot because you and I have talked about him a lot offline. So given the fact that Rashed had a down year this year, maybe he gets to put on a little bit of a show for Flores and his staff.
Yeah, it's really important for somebody like Hamilkar Shed, who, I mean, came back this year, and the last time I looked, he didn't have a sack on the year, which is unheard of given the year before that he had. But now Brian Flores is going to get to see how he works throughout the week and what schemes he can put him in. Some of these players that we've mentioned here, he may come out of this week saying, you know what, I don't want any part of that guy. I don't think Devontae Smith and Najee Harris will be two of those players, but yeah, so there's a lot of ups or a lot of possibilities there with some of these prospects. So you mentioned Najee Harris and Devontae Smith, who are going to be on Coach Flores' team for Senior Bowl week. So is Romandre Stevenson, from the running back from Oklahoma, like you said. A few other interesting names: Creed Humphrey, the center from Oklahoma, who a lot of Dolphins fans have had their eye on. Could be more of a second or third round pick now. Other interesting names: wide receiver from Wake Forest, Sage Serrat, wide receiver from Oklahoma State, Tylan Wallace, defensive ends from Pittsburgh, Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver, defensive tackle Levi, Ozariki from Washington, who we'll talk about a little bit later too, and linebacker Chaz Serrat from North Carolina, all going to be on Coach Flores' roster here during Senior Bowl week.
Isn't Nico Collins on there too?
Yeah, Nico Collins is on there too from Michigan. He missed this past year, more of a possession guy, but should end up going somewhere in the middle rounds.
Yeah, we'll talk. We're going to talk about him a little later in the show, but just bringing him up too.
Yeah, so we're going to go through. We're going to talk about really 5 to 7 names that stick out for us. I don't know, maybe Paul has more, maybe he has less, that really stick out for us here. Past the first round, we gave our top 10 Dolphins board here a couple of days ago. Be sure to check that show out. But these are more names that are kind of getting on the radar as maybe not necessarily first rounders, but are entering a lot of draft conversations here too. But before we get to that, our historical Dolphins question, we got a lot of good feedback on that. Just my history and Paul's history as a Dolphins fan, and on draft day, because we go through every round. We're there every step of the way. So here's my question, Paul. Who is one player that at the time of the selection you didn't like the pick, but turned out to be a good player?
This is going to I wanted to go historical with this, but the one that kept jogging my brain really was, I think the most upset I was about Miami drafting a player was in a long time was last year with Rayquan Davis. I mean, he was a player that seemed a little lazy at times when you watched his college tape, seemed to take plays off. And there was A.J. Dillon, the guy that's going to put Aaron Jones on the free agency market and is still playing in the playoffs, sitting out there, a big bruising running back like I really want on this roster. And, not only did they take what felt like it wasn't a need with Davin Godchow, Christian Wilkins, et cetera on the roster already, they 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 took what looked to be a lazy player who also was sitting there with a guy that I wanted more than most folks did in this draft. So, yeah, Davis proved me so wrong this year. Highest graded rookie defensive tackle, accolade after accolade. God, yeah, no, I love the pick, even though I wouldn't have been unhappy with AJ Dillon, even as it stands today.
Was not happy with the pick either of Rayquan Davis at the time. We were on the show, and just because he was so, to me, one dimensional, I thought, okay, he really has to be an elite run defender to justify that spot. He may not be quite there yet, but I mean, he for 30, 40 snaps a game, he is a load to handle inside. I remember we were doing our show, a live show actually in the second round when both came up, and we both did not like the pick. And it stung me that J.K. Dobbins won one pick before. So mine is going to be going back to the 2018 draft. It's going to be Mike Gesicki. He is somebody that I earmarked as someone before the draft that I did not want. We both wanted Dallas Goedert more, and the Dolphins ended up passing on Goddard for Gesicki. Couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't think he would just be able to moss people at the next level like he did at Penn State. Turned out I was wrong on that. He certainly is one of the best contested catch guys in the league. And after you get past Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Darren Waller, there's a major drop off to that fourth tight end in the receiving department. Gesicki might be that guy now. So another reason I didn't really like it is because Adam Gase was here at the time, and I didn't think that he would use Mike Gesicki to the best of his abilities. And I was right. In the first year, it was a nightmare. He was blocking more than any other tight end in the league. Good luck making sense out of that. So I'm glad that Brian Flores has seen what he's actually good at. So,
Well, I don't know if he was blocking. He just got, that was the play call. Let's be fair. Other than on Twitter, he wasn't blocking anybody.
yeah, it's very true. Very true. So, Paul, let's take a look at some of these prospects here. You look at the first four rounds. The Dolphins have six picks. They pick third and 18th in the first round. They pick 36th and 50th in the second round. They pick 82nd in the third round, and in the fourth round they pick at 114. And it's quite possible the Dolphins can bundle some of these picks that they can manufacture, or that they can trade down and manufacture some more picks here. So, who are some? We're not going to say sleepers, but players that jump out for you, kind of after that first round area.
So one of the first ones. So I kept my list to probably three positions. There are other positions that I like. There are other players I like. I like a lot of the centers in this draft, not just Creed Humphrey, but guys like Josh Myers. And actually, one of our listeners just mentioned in chat, Landon Dickerson, the interior lineman from Alabama. I'm a huge fan of Landon Dickerson's game. I am not a huge fan of grabbing an interior lineman with bad legs. We've been that route with Pouncey. Your legs are such an important part of your game, and if you're a college kid who's already having issues there, I'm out. But getting to prospects I like, one of the ones we already kind of mentioned on this show that's going to be coached by Flores in the Senior Bowl, Romandre Stevenson. He started the year suspended, and then he came out on fire and has sat under everybody's radar. In their bowl game, I remember messaging you at the start of the fourth quarter. At 6 foot, 249 pounds, here he was averaging 10 and a half yards a carry at that point in time, and just eating Florida's lunch in that game. He's a guy that can run through you. He can run over you. He can go around you, and then his big ass is going to run away from you. And he's an exciting player to watch, and you can grab him in the third round and know you're getting him, and you could possibly get him in the fourth.
Quite possibly. I mean, right. He strikes me as somebody in that, the Dolphins pick 36 and 50th, and they also pick, like I said, 82nd in the third and 114 in the fourth. He'll go somewhere between, it looks like right now, 50 and 114. I know that's a big range, but some of those running backs, after they fall out of the first round, they could a lot of times go anywhere. So they could get very, very good value there. So I'm going to go with a running back too. And he's really perceived as the third running back in this class. And that's Javonte Williams from North Carolina. And PFF had a stat on him that in their era of grading college football players, he has the most broken tackles per carry. Now, he's not a big bruising power back, but as far as slipping tackles, he's outstanding. I think, 170, 173 carries, I believe, or 157 carries. He had 75 broken tackles. That's an incredible rate. And he split time with Michael Carter at North Carolina, averaged over 7 yards a carry. What I like about his game is twofold. Number one, he's able just to get the ball and get quickly into the hole and quickly upfield. I'm a big believer that you don't have to drag defenders with you for 5 yards when you can just get to the 5 yard point after the line of scrimmage quickly. Secondly, out of the backfield, he's got natural hands too, and that would really help him here in the passing game. So the way I look at the running back spot now and that 36 pick that the Dolphins have in the second round, I feel very confident that either Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, or Javonte Williams are going to be there by 36. And I think that's what the Dolphins' strategy should be unless they sign somebody in free agency, which I actually hope that they don't do.
Yeah, no, it's he would be one hell of a player. For me, the only other running back that I really have outside of that is, I mean, Chuba Hubbard, who I talked about during our draft coverage a lot last year. I know we're going to get into. I really want to talk about some wide receivers, though, because there are a ton of wide receivers, and we've talked about it at length, the fact that this draft class is stacked with wide receivers, not just those top three guys that everybody seems to be focused on. And it's part of why I'm okay if we miss on one of those top three guys. And not just guys like Kadarius Toney, who we've already talked about on our show the other day. But, you look, and another guy is Jalen Darden from North Texas. The guy is elusive. He gets separation. You watch him, the man runs some crisp routes, and he makes defenders miss in the open field after he catches the ball. He's definitely a yards after catch guy. And then you've got Tutu Atwell from Louisville, right? Tutu is tiny. Like, we're talking Jakeem Grant tiny.
Well, yeah, his name's Tutu. He better be tiny.
Right? I mean, he's 5'6", I think 165 pounds. Not what you want in a wide receiver, supposedly. But he's reportedly running a 4.26 reliably right now for a 40 time. He catches everything. He can return kicks just like Jalen Darden can. And he's just a monster out there, and he's way down people's boards in part because of his size. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. I don't care. I care how big running backs are. I don't care how big wide receivers are if they can play football. It's you can create the mismatches with any sized guy at wide receiver.
Well, and given his size, given how small he is, this isn't somebody who's going to go in the first round. I mean, probably not somebody who's going to go in the second round. If you're talking about a really elite skill, if you can get him in the middle rounds and you're not investing a lot in him, and maybe he only plays 20 snaps a game. We've wanted Jakeem Grant to be that type of wide receiver for so long. And if Atwell's the pick, or they pick somebody like that in the third or fourth round that's similar to Jakeem Grant, hate to say it, but maybe you cut Jakeem Grant and save $3 million. I don't want to do that. I still think he's one of the best returners in the game. Second team all pro as a returner. I would keep that for $3 million. But
what I will say about Tutu, and it's the last thing I will say about Tutu, is he's a faster Jakeem Grant with better hands.
Yeah,
That's a
That's a good
tough
take there.
spot.
Yeah. You bet, you bet. And one thing a wide receiver I don't want to do, and the reason I do see significant value in Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Kyle Pitts, those elite pass catchers at the top is, you know, Jakeem Grant and Lynn Bowden are rosterable players. They have skills. And if we get down to the third, fourth, fifth round, it's important the Dolphins don't take a receiver where they're just throwing somebody else onto the pile who can't get onto the field. So we'll see as that approaches. But I've got a wide receiver too that's very under the radar, might be a mid to late round pick. That's Marquez Stevenson out of Houston. And he's 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's had some injury problems. I mean, he's been in college football for a long time. He's 24 years old. In 2017, he had a torn ACL. And he's come back from that. This past year for Houston, because of COVID and all the games that they had canceled, he only played, I think, in 7 games, only caught 20 passes. But I think he's incredible as far as disengaging from defenders and creating space for himself. And that to me is one of the best skills you can have as a wide receiver there. And if you can get down in the mid to late rounds there and have somebody that really naturally gains separation, he may be somebody worth taking a look at there in round 4, round 5, round 6. So that's all, Paul. That's all I have actually for the offensive side of the ball. I've got
So,
3 to 4 other guys on defense. Anybody else?
yeah, let me jump in
Jump
real
out for you
quick
on
on that.
offense.
I mean, we talked a little bit about Sage Serrat earlier in the show. He's a guy I really like. And, he's one of those bigger bodied receivers at 6'3", 215. And Nico Collins is a guy we touched on before. I'm very interested to see how he shakes out at the Senior Bowl. And he was already on my radar anyway, but then, CK, who we've had on the show a number of times in the past, he put out there that his thoughts on Nico Collins were he's basically Preston Williams if you found all 5 Infinity Stones, which made me kind of turn my head a second time and look at him. And he is a big-bodied wide receiver, but he separates well. He catches everything thrown his way, and he really doesn't get hurt, which if all you told me was he was Preston Williams who doesn't get hurt, I'm intrigued. It's and then you tell me he's a better Preston Williams that doesn't get hurt, and you can get him in a mid to late round. Well, I'm going to give that guy a long, hard look. And he does have a lot of Preston Williams similarities. And I know it sounds weird that some of what I'm stumping for here is, a better Jakeem Grant, a better Preston Williams. But those guys, you get a better Jakeem Grant and you've got a Tyreek Hill. It's you get a better Preston Williams and, you've got Brandon Marshall when he didn't play for the Dolphins. It's so... Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all for improving the same type of guy if that's the right person that's there at the time.
Yeah, Nico Collins doesn't quite have Preston Williams size because a few players do, but he can separate better, and he's that same style of receiver. So yeah, again, another player that Coach Flores is going to have on his sideline here during Senior Bowl week and get to know real well. And 2 other players too that'll be fascinating to watch here. Smaller school guys that'll be on Flores' squad too. Dylan Redunes from North Dakota State and Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa. Spencer Brown, 6'9", 325 pounds, incredible length. And he's one of those guys that we see during Senior Bowl week, like Ben Barch last year, that just really come out of nowhere. I mean, Barch went in the 4th round. He easily could have gone in the 2nd or 3rd round too. So that's somebody to keep our pulse on, as well as like we said, Creed Humphrey at center. I mean, his stock is kind of steadily declined throughout the year, but if you're looking there at pick either 50 or 82 for the Dolphins, if he's still there, that could be very good value. On the defensive side of the ball, Paul, I've got a couple of guys here. Who are some that jump out on your list as ones we should keep an eye on as we continue this process?
I mean, Hamilkar Sheds is definitely one of them. I know he had that down year this year, and this is going to be a big week for me for whether or not he stays on my radar with how he does with Flores and staff. He's kind of a one-trick pony, but before this season, he was really, really good at that one trick, because that one trick was getting to quarterbacks. And you can find a role for that. It's and damn, I just saw a comment in chat that, but you watch him. He had such a natural ability to beat blocks and do it with speed and violence and get after quarterback play in and play out. And so I want to see if he can recover that and see if the Dolphins believe he can. It's right now he's gonna go in a later round than he probably should have because of the fact that he had a down year this year.
So, well, I've got to ask, what was the comment in chat?
It was something about Shaq Griffin having better hands than Jakeem Grant. There's a lot of ones I'll go with. I'm not going to make fun of somebody for being handicapped, so let's cut that one off, guys.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I shouldn't have asked.
Yeah, I was trying to leave it alone, Cat.
Gotcha. Well, hey, people were wondering, so
Yeah.
yeah. Defensively, they're two. One guy that I think has been flying under the radar is Washington defensive tackle Levi Ozariki, and it's not an incredibly strong defensive tackle class, but he would be either first or second for me on this entire list. I mean, even though he's 6'3", 293, you watch him and he looks like he's a lot bigger. And I think he's scheme versatile too. He's got long arms for being 6'3". He can shed blockers. He's been really for a couple of years in college football, a projected first or second round pick. So that's hard to do at defensive tackle. And he did opt out this past year, and he's also going to get to play with Brian Flores here during Senior Bowl week too. So if he's available in that 50 range, it would be the same type of value as a couple years ago when Jerron Reed fell down late in the second round and the Seahawks took him. I could see that same type of value. Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh, and I'm not just picking out players that are going to be on Brian Flores' team this weekend, but he's also going to be there. So I'm excited to see all these players there. He's really a kind of what you see is what you get. Edge setter at defensive end. He's powerful. He doesn't have a lot of pass rush moves, but he just gets by with sheer power. And the Dolphins, who may need to strengthen those edges at defensive end and get a rotational third guy, I think he could make a big impact. His game actually kind of reminds me a lot of Shaq Lawson. And Shaq Lawson will be a free agent here in a couple of years. Maybe you can, at a good price, move in somebody like Jones if you could get him late in the second or early in the third round as well. Paul, who jumps out for you at defense as well?
Well, I mean, Tyler Shelvin, the defensive tackle from LSU, he's one of those guys I find myself grabbing in the third or fourth round, depending on how the draft board shakes out in a lot of mock drafts. And he is a big plug that you can put in the middle that can get a little bit of that upfield push. It's for me, though, the defensive tackle position is such a luxury that it's hard for me to look at that one. But on the other side of the ball, still on defense, there are still a couple of guys that I had from last year that are out there. They haven't moved up draft boards fully yet. And I go to the safety position, which I hate to do, and I know a lot of Dolphin fans want to upgrade the safety position. I like Bobby McCain and Eric Rowe. I like Brandon Jones. But there are a couple of guys that really, really are up there. I mean, you got Richard LeCount from UGA, who's a little bit of that undersized safety. But the one that I find myself keep going to is a guy that I loved last year. I can't understand why he's not up higher on people's boards, and that's Richie Grant from UCF. He's 6 foot. He's 190. He can play man with reliability, but he can also play zone. He can be that over-the-top guy that helps out and makes the right reads. He shows great discipline and great instincts, and he's a sure tackler, which we all know Brian Flores is huge on being a sure tackler. And he tackles with firmness and violence. He separates players from the ball. And if you watch him blitz, it's impressive, like to say the least. I mean, he gets that quarterback with a quickness and with violence. And when I say that, think about when you watch Jerome Baker blitz, which we've talked about, when you watch a Landon Roberts blitz, which we've talked about. And now that's coming from a safety position, blitzing with that firmness and violence and literally getting that beat on somebody and just destroying a play. So he's a guy I think that Brian Flores would have a heck of a lot of fun with. And you could get him easily in the fourth or fifth round as it stands right now if he doesn't continue to rise at people's draft boards, which it's rumored he's starting to do.
Yeah, I think he is, and I do think he'll end up being a day two pick, so second or third round somewhere. Um, and I echo what you're saying. I am a big proponent of stockpiling defensive backs. I mean, again, I've been saying this for years. How many times at the end of the year do we have to see somebody on the field like Clayton Fedulum, Bakari Rambo, RJ Stanford, these guys who, okay, the rest of our secondary is good to great, but we've got a six defensive back out on the field, and when Josh Allen drops back, he's just going to be looking at that guy. It's the Jerry Wilson syndrome. So I yeah, a huge proponent of stockpiling defensive back. So two of my favorites here, really on this entire list, are at defensive back. And you mentioned Richie Grant there at safety. The guy I have is projected a little bit higher. In fact, he might be the number one projected safety in the entire draft now, and maybe when it's all said and done. And that's Trevon Moring, from TCU.
Okay.
He's he could. I think on the consensus board where I combine all the boards, I think he was in that 35 to 40 range. So probably won't go in the first round, but I loved his tape when I watched him. I watched 3 games of his the other day at 6'2", 208. I love that, a guy like that is typically a little bit hippie. He doesn't turn and run with receivers all that well. This is not the case with him. He can flip his hips like a cornerback can. So it wouldn't surprise me if he ran fast that he moves to cornerback too. But and also at 208, he can also come up and lay the wood as well. I mean, I see a very well-rounded safety here where, look, I mean, Bobby McCain is proved me wrong last year, but he's also going into what, his 7th year. Maybe in not this up. I want McCain to be around next year, but we get to 2022, 2023. If he loses a step at any point or has any injury problems, that may be the time that you talk about moving on. But that's not that time yet. But Mooring, I would comfortably take at 50 at this time, maybe even 36, even though he's a safety. At cornerback, Elijah Molden from Washington, playing in the slot, is somebody that he's really the slot master in this draft. Somebody that a lot of teams may not look at because a lot of teams out there are gonna want that cornerback that can both play outside as well as play inside. Because the Dolphins have Byron Jones and Xavier Howard on the edges. They've got Noah Igbenogany waiting in the wings, who we hope takes a big step up this year. The Dolphins could be in the market for strictly a slot guy to compete with Nick Needham, where the loser of that competition moves down to dime back. So, yeah, a lot of good value after the first round.
Yeah, no, there are so many guys I'm excited for in this draft. I mean, I know we're going to be talking at length when we do our position by position groups. After the Super Bowl once and after the virtual combine, however, whatever form it takes this year, it's going to be a weird offseason, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many guys that were supposed to enter the draft last year that didn't, and I'm excited to see what they've got in that tank. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, you've heard me ramble about my weird man crushes way more, and I can't wait to be able to really be able to talk about them on here because I'm gonna get them. I'm gonna get them.
Yeah, we all do here as the draft approaches, and a lot of players did go back for their senior year or whether it's junior or senior. They went back to college football when they could have come out last year. Travis Etienne, Creed Humphrey, did their stock rise by going back? I don't really think it did. So I'm a big proponent of I view graduating college as a sign of weakness. No, I'm just kidding. But
You heard it here first, kids.
yeah. But look, I, I I don't say a lot of things people just say because it sounds good. If you go back to and graduate college when you could have been a first rounder, I think you're playing with fire. Okay. Other than that, graduate college. You can always go back and graduate later. You're not. Yeah, there's a couple of exceptions, like Myron Rolle, the safety from Florida State, 10 years ago. He was a Rhodes Scholar. Okay. You want to stay for your senior year. He could be doing, and he's already doing a lot of things outside of football now that his career is over. That that's different. But anyway, I don't know where I
Well,
was
see,
going
I,
with that.
I will say I respect players that go back not to improve their draft stock, but they go back because it's a goal for them to finish college, and it's a goal. You know, they're pretty sure they're going to make it to the NFL if they don't get hurt, but they're betting on themselves, and you know they're not trying to improve their draft stock, but they've got something left to do with that school, and they're showing the loyalty there. Those moments I respect, regardless of if they hurt or help their draft stock by doing so.
I don't. Um,
Well, we do know that Flores and Greer kind of like those guys that show that leadership and fortitude and finish school and act as captains and all those things. So they
that
are
that
guys to
is
keep an eye on.
that's a great point. That Brian Flores really pays attention to, and Chris Greer really pay attention to whether or not you were a captain and a leader in college. Uh, Loyalty, I don't know about that, but captain, yeah, absolutely. That's a big deal for Brian Flores. Another thing too, Paul. A man crush from a couple years ago was Obi Melifonwu from
If he's
UConn.
coming out, if he's coming out,
Yeah, if he Melifonwu from Syracuse, 6'3", 213, he's somebody who could skyrocket
dude,
up towards.
I remember being at a game. And we've talked about this. I used to tailgate with Obi's mom or Obi's mom. Sorry, it's but I remember walking down to talk to her because she had shot me a text, and Iffy stood up, and I just looked up at this guy when he's in high school. I think he was a sophomore at the time, and I just looked up and went, "Holy crap!" It's and the guy was built like a freaking marble statue. It's and I'm like, "You're a sophomore? Oh, good lord!"
Yeah,
It's I mean, he looks the part and he can play. He really can. I'm hoping for the kid. I was bummed when he decided he was going to Syracuse, but I was happy for him because he really is a nice, good kid.
yeah, and it was a shame with Obi too. He got injuries, a lot of injuries early. Who knows what he would have become if not? But yeah, it was a shame because he was a freak athlete coming out of UConn and was a good player.
Yeah.
Um, it, and a few guys from I'm a Mizzou fan. I really think are flying under the radar. Safeties Josh Bledsoe and Tyree Gillespie. A couple other names. They should be mid to late round guys
Well, what
because they're
about
not.
Bolton? What about
Who?
Bolton?
Nick Bolton. I'll tell you what. I liked him more when people were talking about him as like a second or third round pick.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying first round's a bad spot. He actually reminds me a lot of Devin Bush from that came out of Michigan a couple years ago. But the difference is Devin Bush was a lot denser and he ran in the 4.4s. If Nick Bolton does the same thing, then I think he could end up being a mid first rounder. But Devin Bush was 10th overall pick in the draft. The Steelers traded up for. He got hurt this year, so we'll see with Bolton. I wonder. I think he could easily slide into that Landon Roberts role, who that fire plug who just comes up the middle. Does he? Can he cover enough ground to make him an elite player in this defense? I think he can certainly cover enough ground, but whether or not you just got to be a different species here to justify a top 15 pick as an off-ball linebacker. I think Micah Parsons is that guy.
Yes.
Bolton, I like a little more in that second round area.
I would draft Micah Parsons in the first round, second round, third round, and fourth round if I could, and just put them all over the damn defense.
He, I mean, those off-ball linebackers tend to drop a little bit. I don't know if you saw. There was this mock draft I saw, and it was from, I think it was from the Draft Network. They had the Dolphins trading from 3 down to 12, getting a 2022 first rounder and second rounder, and then I think a third and a fourth, or excuse me, a second and third this year. Just a huge haul, taking Devontae Smith at 12, and then had Micah Parsons falling to 18. I was
I
like,
saw that, and I closed it. I think I,
yeah, I don't think
I
that's happening.
tried not to see them take Micah Parsons at 18 in that draft, but I couldn't close the window fast enough, and my eyes saw it, and I just went, ugh. Like I would love it, but you know, I don't think they're both going to show up to the draft with a gas mask video. It's just not real. Like we're not playing Madden, guys. It's Jesus.
I tell you what, I no, I don't think Micah Parsons would fall to 18. I
He
don't.
could. He could, depending on what happens with the allegations that are out there from a
Yeah,
couple.
that's very true. That is very true. That needs to be looked at, and he needs to interview well. He needs to show himself that he is a rare off-ball linebacker. The tape looks like he is, but one misstep along the way, and it's very easy for a player like that to fall
Well, and he
quite a
he
bit.
he needs to knock his interviews out of the park.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds weird to say for a guy that we can talk about with the third overall pick as a potential target, but he really needs to knock his interviews out of the park. He needs to just be honest about everything and be remorseful if anything actually happened, or honest about it if it didn't, and just go from there. One question we got in the chat, and I made a promise, and I apologize to you now, Kat. I made a promise I would bring it up. Do you think? Do you think the Watson thing to Miami happens?
Uh, no. If I had to guess, no, because I think just so many things have to happen. For me, for this to happen, I think there are basically four major things that need to happen. They need to fire Jack Easterby, which sounds like they're not gonna do.
No.
Um, Number two, I think they need to hire Eric Bieniemy, which I don't think that they will. So I think those two things will lean heavily toward doing that. Number three, Deshaun Watson has to make a promise. I will never play for the Texans again, and mean it. Uh, I don't know about that. I think he could be unhappy and play for them, but saying, "Look, I'm going to walk away from football if you don't trade me," and I think it needs to get to that point.
Well,
And then
his backup could end up being his coach, and we'll talk about that after you're done.
the fourth one is they've got to like Tua. They've because to me that's got to be a swap
Yeah.
on that. So I think there are too many hurdles. And look, I don't get it with a lot of Dolphins fans. I really don't. How can you not look at this situation and see a good situation and a potentially great situation? Whether how you want to prioritize those or not. People get so pissy with Tua. I mean, look, I think he'll be great. Okay. I think I'm excited to build around him, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. But just the suggestion that he may not be Deshaun Watson, some people get so angry about that. I don't have time for it. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And look, and here's the thing too. And the last thing I'll say about Tua, there is a possibility Tua may not be better than Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins. And I've got news for you. You've got to be really good to be one of those two quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins just threw for 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns, has been in the playoffs multiple times. The 49ers got to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that may be the route the Dolphins have to take, is the 2019 San Francisco 49ers, where you have a good quarterback and a great supporting cast.
Yeah, no, I think the funniest. So, two things on this. For one, I'm starting to lean where I think Deshaun Watson flirted with Miami to, I hate to say it, but to get the Jets' attention. I don't want to say it that way, but you know,
What? Why would you? I'm curious why you would say that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I
it's
I haven't looked down that road as much.
he immediately had some videos out where he's up in New York, in a New York cab with his agent. He's going to watch his buddy James Harden play basketball. He's making a freaking music video on the New York street. Like, it's just like, huh, interesting. And the Jets can offer a better package than Miami can. And they could potentially make some sense, especially with their new head coach, who I know likes Sam Darnold, but I'm not going to make any bones that I think Sam Darnold will ever be Deshaun Watson.
I don't think he'll be Matt Moore.
Yeah.
I never got it with Sam Darnold. I never understood what the big deal was about him, and
If he can
that
keep
that's
if he can keep his internal organs intact, he might actually be okay.
I mean, and part of it is going to Adam Gase and the Jets, but and the reason for it, and why I think the Jets go quarterback at 2, if unless something crazy happens with Watson, is that um, they've got to make a decision on Darnold a week after the draft about picking up his 5th-year option. So, uh, uh, you know, let's say that they went with Penny Sewell at 2, which I personally don't think is going to happen. A lot of people, including you, think that it might or could. I think they go quarterback because even if you have Darnold here for the 4th year, you've got to pick up his option before that, and you've got to commit to paying him what, $25 million. You might be able to rescind that offer, but even if he does well in his 4th year and he throws for 25 touchdowns, 4,000 yards, and the Jets go 8-8, at that point you've got to sign him to a long-term contract. You've got to go full all the way with this, and that's what I'd love, because I don't think he'll ever be an elite quarterback. I don't think he'll ever be a good quarterback.
Well, and Kat, I want to get back to the Deshaun Watson thing because this one is the most hilarious thing I've ever heard, especially given the coaching cycle right now. The fact that the Texans, Nick Caserio, and Easterby are exploring as an option hiring McCown, who's still actively a player at this point. He would need to retire for this to happen. Hiring McCown with Jim Caldwell as an advisor so he can learn how to be a coach as their head coach. Like, I don't think Deshaun's going to be the only one that wants to run out of the building at this point, whether they do it or not. The fact that they're considering this makes Nick Caserio an immediate joke to me. Jack Easterby is a joke. If I was the owner and I got wind that they were considering this, like, the guy's never coached anything in his life, and you're going to make him the head coach of it, and especially with guys like Eric Bieniemy out there.
Some people can't get out of their own way, and I've heard that too, and I think it's nuts. And
they're more Brownsy than the Browns.
I mean, if you're going to have Jim Caldwell show Josh McCown to be a head coach, why don't you just hire Jim Caldwell? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. We could go down that rabbit hole, but we're going to end the show here. And this was our breakdown here of players after the first round, giving a little peek at the Senior Bowl rosters as well. I'm Brian Cat NFL, Paul is Fanatic _pick. Be sure to smash that like button. We appreciate the support here, and we look forward to talking more in the draft with you. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the fin side.